Okay, good day, people. So Hyperborean Voyager posted up, I think it was second or third video on being in time, and he's about now through the introduction, sort of the setup, where Heidegger's going to get into his method of investigation as an outline. And I think that he's using the sort of classic, sort of standard translation by Macquarie and Robinson. I do think the Jones Stambaum might be a little more helpful in some ways, and my sympathies go out. I do think it's a notoriously difficult text. I wish I could say I'm going to lend ultimate insight into all of this, but I guess I'll try to do what I can on some of the issues that were being raised here, on the Antic and the ontological, and some of the problems there of Dasein's relation to the meaning of being in general. Okay, so the point, I think, is something like this, that, boy, it's really tough to just cut at, and I think it's easier to sit and read sections of the text. It's only so helpful. It just becomes like more hermeneutically embedded chin pulling. I think we need to just cut to the chase. Okay, so Heidegger's having a truck with the history of philosophy in the way that they've tried to ask the question of being. And the question of being has been dealt with, he would say, not as a kind of fundamental ontology, but really through taking those beings that we see by way of our engagements and by way of our involvements, and taking the kind of being of those beings for our own kind of being. And it's sort of like the difference of the Antic ontological, or the issue that he's sort of driving at there is, yeah, there are factical sciences, ontical sciences of the world, and even of the human, of psychology, sociology, of history, but of the natural sciences as well. And those give us categorical determination of entities, and we can predicate a substance. We can break certain beings down to their component parts, and the more that we think about the being of beings in terms of their predicate properties, the more that we might get seduced into thinking of being in general as something like the highest and most abstract category. And I think what Heidegger is trying to do is say that that itself is going to be very limited, because Dasein's pre-thematized comprehension of being, that is, it has a pre-ontological understanding of being, and that is what we want to interrogate, because this pre-ontological understanding of being is, I guess we're going to say, it's what makes categories themselves possible or necessary. That is, it's the kind of temporality, the temporal openness and the clearing that is Dasein's being, which gives, and gives is maybe the wrong word, but see, Dasein holds a privileged position over all other beings because Dasein holds an understanding of being in its being. It comprehends being, even if in just an average everydayness way, in terms of the thingliness of things, in terms of their ontic, I don't know, the characteristics that they have when we analyze them in terms of, again, of properties or of component substances. And I think that okay, Hyperborean Voyagers on an important issue here, on this issue of, okay, yeah, Dasein means being here, being there, ambiguously, and it's that condition of what we call the human, and the existential that he's driving toward is it's part of the problem of how I get from always being a particular individual with a particular set of circumstances and history and trying to get from there to the problem of being in general. How is ontological work even possible? I mean, is it possible to get out of something that maybe someone would accuse to be a kind of subjectivism or a kind of solipsism or psychologism? You know, I think to the people who want to say that there's a lurking psychologism in Heidegger, well, part of the problem is this, ask this question of, isn't there an ontological difference between Dasein's being and the being of non-Dasein beings? That there seems to be certainly something very factical about each of us in every case. That is, we can be analyzed in terms of materiality, but will that be a sufficient revealing of the nature of who we are? And see, I keep avoiding it. I haven't once used the word. I'm going to use it right now because it otherwise maybe is too mysterious. But see, the word that's lurking in the backdrop of all of this is consciousness. See, Heidegger, he doesn't want to use it. He's trying to distance himself from Husserl's, his notion of intentionality as something that's eidetic and a property of consciousness. Heidegger's trying to move that notion of intentionality into a kind of praxial historicity of the way that comportment and the organism in historical modes of comportment disclose entities in a certain way, and that disclosure itself is a pre-thematized understanding of being. Okay, so I mean, I think, boy, so much of this is, I'm probably all over the place. I think it's a great start. I think, you know, for the people who are trying to tackle the reading group, yeah, try to read it. My suggestion would be to gobble up more, to press forward more ahead, and don't worry too much about getting it sentence by sentence. I think Heidegger he's a study in hermeneutics, which is you read ahead, just keep reading, and then go back and trust that conversation and rereading will open it. But if you want to only proceed inch by inch and make sure that you're understanding it inch by inch, I don't think you'll ever get it. He's much more of a hermeneutical thinker, and he'll demand a pushing ahead and then a leaping back and a restitching and a reweaving, which I think that's part of what he's trying to drive at. And even there, I want to maybe finish with this, is that he's going to want to distance himself from the expression consciousness, although I don't want to say that that's what he's sort of after. What he's after is the being of consciousness. I mean, when people talk about the hard problem, they're talking about, you know, what is this nature of subjective experience of what how we actually live our lives, and the qualia of lived through experience versus all of those things that can be dealt with in the physical and material and even in the neuro physiological kinds of sciences. But I think what Heidegger is going to do is he's going to, again, distance himself from even the consciousness term, and he's going to move toward a temporality that temporalizes itself as the broadest, most general condition for the being of all beings, including Dasein's being. You know, Dasein's being as temporality and as care, but it's as temporality, is the opening and the clearing for those beings, you know, for the being of all non-Dasein beings. And see, I think this is why when he's going through that intro, he gives those 3 reasons why he puts Dasein at a kind of prior state, right? When he says prior, he means there's a priority to the examination of Dasein's being, because Dasein's being, in its world, it simply encounters things, and then it too quickly, mistakenly takes its own being for the kind of being that gets disclosed in the things that it discloses. And it's sort of like it suppresses or covers over the way that ecstatical temporality, a kind of retaining that awaits, an opening itself, is the very clearing by which the being of other things, or I guess of the things themselves, just show themselves to us. Okay, so I'm all over the place, but I do think a little more direct cut than straight into the text was hopefully helpful. And great job. Keep at it, people. It's a really tough text. Okay, thanks.